You sit around a dying campfire, your eyes scanning the same dirt-smudged faces you have known since birth. In this tiny group, there are no strangers. There is no swiping left or right, and absolutely no flirting as you know it today. For 99% of human history, the concept of dating simply did not exist. You were completely trapped in a tight social web of just about 150 people. And in this prehistoric world, choosing the wrong mate was not just a bad romance. It was a literal death sentence for your DNA. Welcome to the brutal, unromantic, and highly calculated reality of Ice Age reproduction. Let us completely erase everything you think you know about ancient love. Forget the cartoon caveman dragging a woman by her hair. That is a modern myth. In reality, prehistoric women held immense power when it came to choosing who got to pass on their genes. To understand why, you need to look at the numbers. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar discovered that human brains are hardwired for a specific group size. We call it Dunbar's number. Your brain can only maintain stable social relationships with a maximum of about 150 individuals at any given time. In the Paleolithic era, this meant your entire dating pool was restricted to the people sitting around your immediate camp and a few neighboring fires. But here is the terrifying evolutionary trap. Out of those 150 people, almost half are children or elders. The rest are your direct siblings or cousins. If you mated within this small circle, the genetic consequences would be devastating. Inbreeding would quickly wipe out your entire tribe through disease and weakness. So, your ancestors faced a massive biological problem. How do you find a healthy partner when everyone you know is basically your cousin? The answer is that you had to look outward. You had to wait for those rare, tense moments when your tribe crossed paths with total strangers. But approaching a strange tribe in the prehistoric wilderness was incredibly dangerous. A wrong move, and you could be killed on the spot. There were no shared languages and no guarantee of peace. To survive this encounter and secure a mate, you needed a very specific strategy. Your ancestors invented something brilliant to solve this. They created the world's first dating profiles, but they did not use words or pictures. At sites like Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists have found tiny seashells pierced and strung together, dating back over 70,000 years. Can verify. These were not just pretty decorations. Anthropologists believe these shell beads acted as a prehistoric passport, a visible signal of your status and network. Wearing these beads told strangers from other tribes that you were a peaceful trader, a safe person to approach, and a highly desirable mate. Once the initial terror of the meeting passed, the real evaluation began. And this is where prehistoric dating gets completely wild and unexpected. Today, people might evaluate a potential partner based on their car, their bank account, or the expensive designer clothes they choose to wear. But in a nomadic hunter-gatherer society, nobody owned anything. You had to carry all your possessions on your back, so wealth simply did not exist. There were no kings, no rich families, and no social classes to marry into. So, what made an Ice Age human incredibly sexy? It was all about your daily behavior and your contribution to the group. But do not think that being the strongest hunter automatically guaranteed you a mate. In fact, showing off your giant muscles or constantly bragging about your kills was the fastest way to become totally repulsive to women. Anthropologist Richard Borchet-Lee spent years studying the Jew/Hoansi people, a modern hunter-gatherer tribe whose egalitarian lifestyle closely mirrors our deep ancient past. He documented a fascinating social practice known as insulting the meat. Whenever a skilled hunter brought back a massive kill, the tribe would completely mock him. They would complain that the animal was too skinny or the meat tasted terrible. This was not ingratitude, it was a deliberate survival mechanism. By insulting the successful hunter, the tribe prevented him from getting a big ego. Arrogance leads to hierarchy, and hierarchy destroys equality. If you wanted to attract a mate, you had to be humble, generous, and willing to share everything you had without expecting loud praise in return. But being nice was not just about making friends. It was a rigorous biological test for the hardest job in the Paleolithic world: raising a human baby. Unlike other animals that walk within hours, a human infant is completely helpless for several years. It takes an estimated 13 million calories to raise a single human child from birth to their full independence. There was absolutely no way a single mother, or even a dedicated couple, could gather that much food all alone. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer HRY points out that early human survival relied entirely on a communal system known as alloparenting. This literally translates to other parents. It meant the entire tribe had to pitch in to keep your child alive. Grandmothers, aunts, uncles, and even unrelated friends shared the crushing daily burden of feeding, carrying, and protecting the vulnerable young. So, when an ancient woman evaluated you as a potential mate, she was not merely looking at your hunting skills. She was secretly evaluating your prehistoric social credit score. Did the rest of the tribe actually like and respect you? If you were selfish, aggressive, or arrogant, the tribe would subtly withdraw their vital support from you and your family. Without the tribe's shared calories and shared body heat, your offspring would simply not survive the next freezing ice age winter. This means human evolution actively bred out extreme selfishness, strictly selecting for males who were highly cooperative and deeply empathetic. It was a brutal form of sexual selection. Prehistoric women effectively domesticated men by simply refusing to mate with violent ones. But what happened when this perfect, egalitarian social system was suddenly shattered by a completely new and disruptive human invention? Fast forward to the end of the Ice Age. Everything you just learned about prehistoric dating is about to violently change. With the dawn of agriculture about 12,000 years ago, human beings stopped moving. Your ancestors settled down and began tending to crops. Historian Yuval Noah Harari calls this the luxury trap. They thought they were domesticating wheat, but the wheat was actually domesticating them. For the first time in human history, people started to accumulate surplus food. Your ancestors built permanent houses and fences to protect their resources. This created a brand new, completely unprecedented concept that would change human relationships forever: the invention of strict private property. Once you have property, you naturally want to pass it down to your own children when you die. You desperately need a biological heir. But there was a massive biological problem with the old hunter-gatherer way of living, where multiple men might help raise one single child. A mother always knows for an absolute fact that a baby is hers. But without modern technology, a father could never be completely certain. If you were a wealthy Neolithic farmer, you could not risk giving your hard-earned land and cattle to another man's biological child. The only way to guarantee paternity was to control reproduction entirely. This is exactly where strict, enforceable monogamy was essentially invented by your ancestors. Marriage shifted from a flexible, egalitarian partnership into a rigid economic contract. Women and children were often reduced to being just another form of property. That sudden, sickening burning feeling of jealousy you get when your partner looks at someone else? It is an ancient agricultural alarm bell. It is a deeply ingrained psychological reflex designed to protect your genetic investment and ensure your precious property stays strictly in your own bloodline. So, your brain is currently running two conflicting operating systems: a hunter-gatherer hardware that craves community, and an agricultural software demanding strict ownership. Which brings the story right back to you, sitting alone in your modern bedroom, staring at a glowing screen filled with endless strangers. You are trying to play an ancient evolutionary game of survival using a digital tool that completely breaks all the rules your ancestors lived by. Dating apps force your brain to evaluate thousands of potential mates in a single afternoon. This completely destroys the natural limit of Dunbar's number. Your Paleolithic hardware is suddenly short-circuiting. It was designed to slowly build trust within a tiny, tight-knit community of just 150 people. When you are constantly swiping past endless strangers, your prehistoric instincts misinterpret this as wandering alone through a dangerous, unfamiliar wilderness. And when you get rejected or ghosted online, the psychological pain you feel is incredibly intense. It literally hurts your physical body. This is because your brain processes social rejection using the exact same neural pathways as physical injury. Being rejected used to mean freezing to death. We are judging our modern romantic lives by the rigid, jealous standards of an agricultural property contract, while using digital tools that break our minds. But deep down, you are still that same hunter-gatherer. The traits that actually guarantee long-term human happiness have not changed in 300,000 years. It is not about the fancy car you drive, the expensive clothes you wear, or the perfectly curated dating profile you spend hours creating. It is about your capacity for deep empathy, your willingness to share without ego, and your ability to be a supportive part of a community. If you want to find a partner who will truly stand by you when the modern ice age hits, stop trying to be the arrogant hunter. Stop flexing your modern wealth and start looking for someone who passes the ultimate alloparenting test. Look for kindness, not just status. Your ancestors survived the harshest conditions on Earth, not through jealousy or endless choices, but through profound cooperation and trust. The ancient alarm bells in your head are finally starting to make sense. You are not broken. You are just living in the wrong environment. So, the next time you feel completely exhausted by the modern dating market, simply put the glowing screen away and take a deep breath. You sit alone, scanning a screen of endless strangers. But remember, for 99% of human history, dating did not exist. You are just trying to survive. But wait, before you put your smartphone away entirely, there is one more deeply twisted chapter in the story of ancient prehistoric romance. About 50,000 years ago, your ancestors migrated out of Africa and encountered a situation that would completely break every rule of modern dating. They stumbled upon an entirely different human species, the Neanderthals. They were not just primitive apes, they were our highly intelligent evolutionary cousins. Neanderthals were bulkier, heavily adapted to extreme cold, and possessed brains that were actually just as large, if not slightly larger, than ours. So, what exactly happens when a migrating group of Homo sapiens unexpectedly meets a Neanderthal tribe in the freezing prehistoric wilderness? You might assume they immediately started a brutal, bloody war for territory and scarce food resources in the harsh Ice Age environment. However, the fossil record and modern genetic sequencing tell a completely different, and shockingly intimate, story about these two human species. They did not just fight each other. They actually communicated, shared their campfires, and most importantly, they mated and had children together. Imagine the ultimate prehistoric blind date. Your ancestors were crossing the boundaries of an entirely different biological species to find a partner. To a Homo sapiens, a Neanderthal might have looked incredibly rugged, mysterious, and undeniably strong, the perfect mate for a freezing world. This interbreeding was the ultimate evolutionary hack. It was a rapid way to inject fresh, cold-adapted DNA into a struggling genetic pool. Today, geneticists from the Max Planck Institute can actually look at your personal genome and find literal proof of these ancient romances. Most people alive today, especially those outside of sub-Saharan Africa, carry about 1 to 2% of Neanderthal DNA in their blood. This scientifically proves that someone in your direct family tree, thousands of generations ago, looked across a campfire and chose a Neanderthal. Your very existence today is the direct result of the most extreme, cross-species, long-distance relationship in the entire history of human evolution. So, if you were not using dating apps, wealth, or status, what did you actually look at when choosing a mate in the wild? Let us strip away the modern world. Literally. For most of human history, there were no designer clothes, no push-up bras, and no makeup. You were evaluating potential partners in their most raw, unedited biological state. Nothing could be hidden or faked with artificial camouflage. Without these modern distractions, your brain had to rely on a much more primitive, ancient, and incredibly powerful sensory system, your nose. You did not just look at a potential mate, you subconsciously smelled them. And you were actually sniffing out their hidden genetic code. Evolutionary biologists have confirmed that humans are highly sensitive to a specific group of genes called the major histocompatibility complex, or MHC. This MHC is a set of genes that controls your immune system, and it directly determines the unique way your natural body odor smells. When you stood close to a potential mate by the fire, Your brain was secretly running a complex chemical analysis on their invisible scent. If their immune system was too genetically similar to yours, they would literally smell repulsive to you. Your brain would immediately say no. But if their immune system was completely different from yours, their natural sweat would smell incredibly attractive, intoxicating, and undeniably sexy to you. Why? Because mating with someone who has vastly different immune genes guarantees that your child will have a much stronger defense against diseases. This was an automatic, built-in survival mechanism. You were literally using your nose to sniff out the perfect genetic complement to your own DNA. Today, we try to mask all of these crucial biological signals by taking hot showers and spraying ourselves with heavy, artificial chemical perfumes. You might be going on a modern date, completely blinding the very sensory system that successfully kept your ancestors alive for thousands of years. You are basically choosing a partner while wearing an evolutionary blindfold, completely ignoring the deep biological chemistry that actually determines true long-term compatibility. Now, imagine the absolute terrifying reality of becoming pregnant in the middle of a brutal, freezing ice age winter. Today, you have heated hospitals, epidurals, and teams of trained doctors. But back then, pregnancy was a high-stakes battle for survival. You are facing the classic obstetrical dilemma. Human evolution gave you a massive brain, but bipedal walking gave you a narrow pelvis. Giving birth was incredibly painful and highly dangerous. You are crouching in a dark, damp cave, relying entirely on your own body. You cannot scream loudly. In the prehistoric wilderness, the sounds and smells of childbirth would instantly attract deadly, starving predators. Outside the cave, giant cave bears and saber-toothed cats are desperately searching for their next meal in the freezing snow. This is exactly why you could not survive without your tribe. The other women surround you, acting as the very first prehistoric midwives. They hold you, support you, and keep the fire roaring. They are your only medical team and your absolute only lifeline. When the baby finally arrives, it is completely helpless and rapidly losing body heat to the freezing cave air. You must instantly wrap the infant in thick animal hides. But the biological toll on your body has only just begun. Breastfeeding in a sub-zero environment requires an absolutely massive amount of daily calories just to keep you and the baby alive. You cannot hunt or forage. For weeks, you are completely dependent on the rest of the tribe bringing you fat and meat. If they fail, or if a hunt goes wrong, both you and your newborn face certain death by starvation or freezing. But this extreme vulnerability is exactly what forged the unbreakable social bonds of early human societies. Your ancestors survived through radical empathy. The prehistoric mother and child became the absolute center of the tribe's universe, protected by a fiercely loyal community of hunter-gatherers. So, let us go back to that prehistoric campfire. Once you found someone whose immune system smelled right, how did you actually flirt? Today, flirting means sending clever text messages, using emojis, and carefully writing a witty bio on your online profile. None of that existed. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent decades studying modern hunter-gatherers and discovered that the ultimate prehistoric dating platform was the campfire storytelling circle. During the day, conversations were strictly about practical survival, like hunting and gathering. But at night, the firelight changed human brain chemistry entirely. When you sat next to your crush, you did not ask what they did for a living. Jobs did not exist. Instead, you listened to them tell stories. A captivating storyteller demonstrated high intelligence, immense creativity, and a deep sense of empathy. Neuroscience shows that when we hear a great story, the brains of the listener and the storyteller literally synchronize their activity patterns. But storytelling was not the only way to evaluate someone. There was another, far more powerful communication tool: prehistoric gossip. Evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar suggests that human language evolved primarily to replace the physical grooming that monkeys do, turning it into social gossip. Gossip was not just mean high school behavior. It was a highly sophisticated, life-saving social radar system for the tribe. You could not look up a stranger's criminal record online or check their LinkedIn to see if they were a lazy worker. If someone was violent, selfish, or a terrible parent, the tribe's gossip network would silently spread that information to everyone instantly. Your reputation was your absolute only currency. If you had a bad reputation in the Paleolithic era, your dating life was permanently over. Contrast this with modern dating apps, where total strangers can easily hide their true past and present a completely fake, curated persona online. Your brain expects the safety and accountability of tribe gossip, but instead, it is thrown into the terrifying, anonymous chaos of the modern internet. Modern dating often involves going to loud, crowded nightclubs to meet people. You might naturally assume that dancing is a relatively modern invention. But the deep urge to move your physical body to a rhythmic beat is actually one of the oldest mating instincts you possess. Deep inside the caves of Germany, archaeologists discovered something breathtaking. A delicate, beautifully crafted flute carved entirely from a vulture's wing bone. Dating back over 40,000 years, the Hohlfels flute proves that our ancient ancestors had a highly developed, thriving musical culture. Prehistoric people did not just sit quietly around the fire. They made music, they sang, and most importantly for human reproduction, they danced. But prehistoric dancing was not just for entertainment. To an evaluating brain, a dance was a rigorous, public display of your genetic quality. Think about what it takes to be an exceptional dancer. You need flawless balance, infinite cardiovascular stamina, and perfect physical coordination. In the Ice Age, those exact same physical traits were absolutely mandatory for surviving a brutal hunt or running away from a deadly predator. If you were clumsy, offbeat, or easily exhausted during a tribal dance, you were broadcasting a terrifying message to every woman watching. Your terrible rhythm secretly signaled that your motor skills were fundamentally flawed, making you a massive evolutionary liability for their future children. On the other hand, dancing perfectly in sync with the tribe proved that you were healthy, highly cooperative, and deeply capable of surviving. Fast forward to today. You are standing in a dark, incredibly loud nightclub, watching someone completely fail to move to the music's beat. You suddenly feel a deep, unexplainable ick or instant loss of attraction. But that is not just you being a judgmental or shallow person. That is your ancient Paleolithic brain instantly downgrading their genetic profile, completely convinced that they would trip and die during a mammoth hunt. Even surrounded by flashing lasers and electronic music, your primal instincts are still desperately trying to evaluate the biological survival skills of everyone nearby. If you successfully passed the tribal dancing test and survived the ruthless gossip network, you might finally get physically close to your prehistoric crush. Which brings us to one of the most bizarre, seemingly disgusting, and heavily debated dating behaviors in all of human history: romantic kissing. If you think about it objectively, smashing your mouths together and eagerly swapping saliva is an incredibly unhygienic and objectively dangerous biological act. In a harsh prehistoric world, willingly exchanging bodily fluids meant exposing yourself to deadly ancient pathogens without any modern medicine or antibiotics to save you. So why on earth did your ancestors start doing it? Anthropologists believe that romantic kissing actually evolved from a much older, profoundly unromantic survival habit. Long before mashed baby food was invented, an ancient mother had to heavily pre-chew tough meat and fibrous roots to feed her helpless infant. She would then transfer the heavily chewed food directly from her mouth into her baby's mouth. This practice is scientifically known as kiss feeding. Over hundreds of thousands of years, this deep biological association between direct lip contact, profound trust, and intense emotional love was permanently hardwired into your brain. But as humans evolved, romantic kissing eventually served another hidden, highly practical purpose for prehistoric dating. It became the ultimate genetic background check. Remember those crucial MHC immune genes? To truly smell someone's unique genetic code, you had to get uncomfortably close to the sweat glands on their face. A kiss physically forces you to bring your nose directly into your partner's personal scent zone, allowing your brain to intensely sample their chemical pheromones. If their biological sense secretly signaled a dangerous genetic mismatch or hidden sickness, your brain would instantly trigger a massive wave of physical disgust. This is exactly why a terrible first kiss today can completely and instantly destroy a budding modern romance. It is your evolutionary alarm system firing. Your Paleolithic brain is desperately screaming that this person is genetically incompatible, completely overriding whatever logical or financial reasons you had for liking them. So, a romantic kiss is never just an expression of love. It is a highly invasive, primitive biological scan designed to protect your unborn children. But let us zoom out. If finding a healthy mate was the ultimate goal, what happened when the entire environment suddenly changed around you? About 12,000 years ago, your ancestors traded their incredibly diverse hunter-gatherer diet for a rigid lifestyle dependent on just a few domesticated crops. Scientist Jared Diamond famously called the invention of agriculture the worst mistake in the history of the human race. And your ancient bones prove it. When archaeologists analyze the skeletons of the very first farmers, they do not find healthy individuals. They find overwhelming evidence of a massive biological disaster. Before farming, your ancestors were actually quite tall and robust. But within just a few generations of eating mostly grain, average human height severely plummeted. Your teeth also began to rot. Prehistoric hunter-gatherers had near-perfect, straight teeth because they constantly chewed tough meat and lacked refined sugary carbohydrates entirely. But early farmers suffered from severe dental cavities, painful infections, and massive tooth loss directly caused by their soft, highly starchy, grain-based agricultural diets. Living in tightly packed, permanent villages right next to your domesticated animals also created the absolute perfect breeding ground for catastrophic new infectious diseases. Measles, tuberculosis, and smallpox did not exist in small nomadic tribes. They mutated from farm animals and jumped directly into the dense human population. And remember the hunter-gatherer lifestyle? You only worked about 15 to 20 hours a week to survive, leaving endless time for leisure and sleep. As an early farmer, you were suddenly forced to perform back-breaking labor from dawn until dusk, physically destroying your spine just to avoid starvation. If a terrible drought hit and your single wheat crop failed, your entire village would starve. Nomadic hunter-gatherers simply walked away to find different food. So why did we stay in this trap? Because agriculture allowed humans to pump out more babies faster, even if those individuals were incredibly sickly. Evolution does not actually care if you are happy, healthy, or comfortable. It only cares about producing the absolute maximum number of surviving genetic copies. This agricultural trap is exactly why your ancient body still completely struggles to process the massive amounts of refined grains and sugars you eat today. But your diet is just one small piece of the puzzle. Your entire nervous system is also completely out of sync with reality. Take your fight or flight response. For hundreds of thousands of years, this intense adrenaline rush was strictly designed to escape hungry predators. Today, that exact same biological panic alarm is triggered by a stressful work email or a painfully delayed text message from your crush. Your Paleolithic brain cannot tell the difference between a charging cave bear and a digital rejection. It pumps your body full of toxic cortisol. This chronic anxiety follows you into the night. You lie awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, feeling completely exhausted. Historian Roger Kirch discovered that our ancestors never actually slept in one solid 8-hour block like we are heavily pressured to do today. They practiced segmented sleep. They slept for a few hours, woke up to tend the fire and socialize, and then enjoyed a second sleep. Artificial blue light from your smartphone and blaring digital alarms completely shatter this natural, deeply ingrained circadian rhythm, leaving you permanently sleep-deprived. So you are constantly tired, chemically stressed, and biologically confused. And you bring all of this completely broken hardware into your romantic life. Social media and dating apps create a dangerous optical illusion. They trick your brain into thinking you belong to a massive, infinite tribe. When your brain believes you are surrounded by millions of potential mates, it becomes physically impossible to feel satisfied with just one person. This is the paradox of choice. When faced with endless swiping options, your primitive brain panics, short circuits, and often chooses absolutely no one. Your prehistoric ancestors built long-lasting relationships largely because they only had a very small handful of realistic, healthy options in their entire lives. Because their choices were incredibly limited, they focused all their energy on building deep, cooperative partnerships rather than endlessly searching for a flawless ideal. Modern digital dating turns complex human beings into disposable consumer goods, fighting directly against our deepest evolutionary need for a secure, tight-knit community. It is completely normal to feel exhausted, depressed, or entirely burned out by the modern dating scene. You're fighting a losing battle against your own biology. Your 300,000-year-old brain is desperately trying to play a deep survival game, but technology forces it to play a shallow numbers game. So, how do you actually find love in the 21st century without constantly short-circuiting your primitive evolutionary hardware every single day? First, you must recognize the trap. Stop judging people through a glowing screen where their physical pheromones and real social behaviors are completely invisible. You have to actively recreate the prehistoric village. You need to carefully observe potential partners in real, physical social environments where they interact with others. Find your own Dunbar number. Surround yourself with a tight, trusted community of friends who can act as your modern prehistoric gossip network. Let your tribe evaluate them. If your friends secretly get a bad feeling about someone, they are using ancient survival instincts to perfectly protect you. Instead of formal job interviews disguised as coffee dates, engage in cooperative activities. See exactly how they react under pressure, just like a prehistoric hunt. Look for modern signs of the alloparenting test. Are they truly generous? Do they show deep empathy to strangers without demanding immediate praise or reward? Remember the arrogant hunter. Do not fall for loud bragging, flashy modern wealth, or toxic dominance. Evolution actively punished those aggressive traits with total isolation. Look for the campfire storyteller. Find someone whose mind entirely synchronizes with yours, someone who captivates you with their creativity rather than their bank account. And never ignore the primitive power of your nose. If someone's natural, unperfumed scent repulses you, your ancient immune system is loudly rejecting their DNA. Trust the deep biological scan of a kiss. Your body knows instantly if the genetic chemistry is a match, completely bypassing your logical thoughts. You must consciously reject the toxic agricultural mindset that treats partners as rigid property to be heavily guarded with intense jealousy and strict control. Return to the true egalitarian partnership of the ancient foragers. Love was never about ownership. It was about shared survival against a massive, freezing world. The next time you feel completely overwhelmed by the endless, scrolling digital market, stop blaming yourself. Your biological hardware is not broken. It is simply functioning exactly as it was designed to. You are a 300,000-year-old survival machine trapped in a digital mall. Delete the apps if they drain your cortisol. Step outside and find your physical tribe. Look for the campfire storytellers. Search for the generous alloparents who share their resources without demanding a reward. Pay close attention to who makes your nervous system feel calm. Let your close friends act as your prehistoric gossip radar to protect you from the arrogant, the selfish, and the dangerous. And most importantly, never ignore the incredibly powerful, ancient chemical signals that your own nose is desperately trying to send you. A deep, genuine biological connection will always powerfully override any superficial, modern checklist of wealth, status, or artificial beauty standards that society pushes on you. We must unlearn the toxic agricultural idea that a partner is an economic property to be fiercely guarded and controlled with jealousy. Love in the Paleolithic era was an egalitarian alliance. It was two equal humans standing back to back against a terrifying, freezing world. It was about sharing the crushing burden of survival, raising children together, and finding warmth in the darkest, coldest nights of the Ice Age. So, the next time you sit alone in a dimly lit room, your tired eyes scanning a glowing screen filled with endless strangers, feeling that incredibly familiar wave of modern anxiety and deep evolutionary mismatch washing over your exhausted, overstimulated Paleolithic brain once again. Just turn off the screen. Look around at the real, physical faces of the people who actually make up your true modern tribe. Because for 99% of human history, the modern, stressful concept of dating simply did not exist for your ancestors. You are not failing at romance. You are just a Paleolithic human looking for the right person to sit next to your campfire.